hopefully you can see me okay.
All right. Yeah, I think we're ready to start here. And all right. Hi everyone. Welcome to Modern Forager Stories. This week we have Brian Barzee. I'm Trent Blizzard, and Kristen is here somewhere. She'll be in a minute. Brian, let's introduce you though. This is Brian Barzee. Hopefully you can see him right here. I'm gonna just turn that off. And there we go, Brian. Brian lives in Colorado Springs, and will you shut that door for me? Thank you. And he has been a lifelong mushroom hunter. And Brian, real quick here, tell us about that, what it means to be a lifelong mushroom hunter.
Well, okay. I didn't know that this was going to be in my future, but I had a botanist mother, and she loved to do the wildflowers, and she was an orchid expert. And Colorado holds some 23 species of wild orchids. And she found all of those in the first couple of years we lived here. And she was becoming quite bored with that. And she remembered that fungi and orchids have a special relationship. It was one of the first mycorrhizal relationships worked on and discovered, and it was originally called orchidizal relationship. And that led her into the field of mycology, which, as a citizen scientist, she started the Pikes Peak Mycological Society in 1974, and then by 75, it was pretty well organized and taking off. And so I grew up basically being dragged through the woods by orchid myco psycho mom and her compelling companions of unknown to, when you're a 10-year-old kid, you don't think of someone coming to visit like Alexander Smith as the king of mycology coming to visit. You just think it's one of your mother's dorky friends.
So you had these.
That's how I grew up. That's
you
how
had
I
these
grew
mycology.
Up in the house where it happened.
Nice. You had these mycology Illuminati coming through your house and going mushroom hunting, and here you are today, neck deep in mushrooms in your life. Before we jump in and talk more about mushrooms, though, let's see a little bit of housework here, house cleaning. Kristen is going to man the chat tonight and the Q&A. It could be a difficult technical night. We have had, oh my gosh, rain, and more rain here in Glenwood Springs. It woke up to it and just had a huge thunderstorm go through. We've had some power outages, so we have it here just in case, some backup plans for power outages. So hopefully you guys are going to all be able to hear us okay. I know we're all tech challenged. I think, Brian, where you live, you don't always have the smoothest internet, so you can get a little rough around the edges, at least with your voice quality here, but hopefully we'll have a good streaming experience. For the rest of you, I'm going to open it up here. We have a chat. Go ahead and say hi if you're on chat. Tell us where you are. We also have a Q&A panel. If you want to ask a question, put that in there, and we'll make sure we get it over to Brian and get answered. I think that's good for the house cleaning. We're also live on Facebook right now, if anybody's watching there. So we'll watch for questions coming out there as well, Brian. Other house cleaning stuff tomorrow, Tuesday. I don't know if you know her, maybe from Soma. You remember Elena Sue? She is a koji specialist. And she's coming on tomorrow. She's fascinating, and she's going to talk all about the world of Aspergillus oryzae. I don't know if I said that right. And really fermenting soy sauces and misos and all that cool stuff. So that's going to be another fun presentation tomorrow. Today, though, we have very little on the agenda. I've got some pictures to share, and I have some easy questions to throw your way, Brian, and maybe a couple of hard ones. If I can stump you, I'll be lucky.
You will, mycology is one of those things that stumps all of us at some time or another. So the really great experts, I remember so many times in my life, young, finding some unusual mushroom, bringing it up to them and listening to them say that I don't know what this is. And I would throw up my hands because these are the people I respect as the best experts. And later on, I learned you just are not going to know everything. And it takes a lot of work to figure some of them out. We can learn an enormous amount about them just with morphological identification, which means looking at the mushroom and figuring out by its characteristics what it is.
Yeah,
but not always.
And it seems like the people that are really good at that, also they have some sort of phenomenal memory to be able to remember, like, and you can just see, they look at a mushroom and you can see them clicking through, and you're like, oh yeah, that's and they throw out a species name. I think you almost have to have a special kind of mnemonic devices or didactic memory, I don't know what you call it, to really be that person that knows all those mushrooms.
I totally agree. And the first time I went to Soma, which is the Sonoma County's mycological event that they have every January, and it's just what a lovely group of people. But I remember getting a phone call and somebody asked me where was I when they called me, and I said I was at the Asperger's convention in California, because these people are so bright. And how is there such a collection of strange people that are so connected to this one natural thing that they can remember these incredible names? And it's just a passion that gets in you. You don't have to have a special brain or have a special cog working in your brain. You just have to have a passion to want to know, and then let that lead you.
Yeah, I don't have a special cog, and I've done pretty good over the years at learning a certain number of mushrooms that are important to me, mainly because I can either put them in my stomach or I can't. It's just, how do you go from 50 species to 500? It's just mind-boggling. I'm curious, like, we took you out in the field. How many species of mushrooms do you think you're comfortable kind of that and you can call out and say, I know what that is and that is. Do you have a sense of that? Because you astound me.
Oh, I have no idea. And I can tell you, people think I'm an expert, and I think I'm intermediate at best at identification, having hung out with identifiers that I really respect. And then there's the humility that comes along with going to a new place. So here I am in Colorado. I'm very comfortable with the fungi that are in my backyard on the Southern Front Range. But if I go to California, I'm very uncomfortable claiming I know what anything is out there.
Yeah.
Because the species are just a little different, and things that are common out there we never have. So
yeah, it's part of the fun, though, isn't it?
It takes a lot to learn. You can spend a lifetime learning it. And there's individuals who travel all over the world, and they are gifted. You do have gifted people in this science. Just without naming any names, but the guy who put the Redwood book together out there in California.
Yeah, Christian.
Phenomenal insight in his memory. What a beautiful mind those guys have. And that's just out there in that group of people. And it seems to go throughout mycology, whether you go to Telluride or Eagle or any number of places, NAMA, any of these other mushroom events, you meet these people that have such a connection to it that it's inspiring, if anything.
Yeah. Those events are so much fun to go into that community. Hey, so let me kind of put the first question out here for you. I'm hoping to ask today about a few more obscure Colorado mushrooms, or maybe ones I want to learn more about. And you have found a Hericium, which I think is stunning. I've never found one, and I'd like to learn where you find them and how you find them, and I wonder if I can find any this year in western Colorado. So tell us a little bit about it. I'm going to show a picture, meanwhile, of the Hericium you found. So what species was it, first of all?
Okay, so I'll wait till the photo comes up, but I'll just talk generally about this. This is after Telluride. We have a foray where we invite people from Telluride to come out and foray with the Pikes Peak Club. And in these two pictures is this Hericium that was found on an aspen log. Do you have the other one, the other photo? There it is. There it is in its natural. That's how it was growing. We're calling this Hericium coralloides. Now, Hericium has about 4 or 5 species in it, and the lion's name is Hericium erinaceus. So this is a different species. It has, according to Paul, and one of his lectures, has similar levels of desirable compounds that seem to show nerve growth factors. And this is a very desired edible fungi that grows wild in Colorado. Here it is on an aspen log, and the hashtag is Will Goss, a young, passionate mycologist from Santa Cruz, California, who came out to visit. And he located this specimen on this log, and he brought it back, and you can see it up close on the brown paper bag, the specimens that he brought back. This is, they didn't last long on that brown paper bag because another guest in my house at the same time was Graham Steinreck. And if anybody knows who Graham is, he's the incredible wild food chef and mushroom chef from Colorado that's now in the Pacific Northwest. And he explained to Will that the edges of this mushroom are turning brown and it should be dealt with immediately. And Will looked up and said, yeah, probably something should happen. And Graham whisked them off to the kitchen, and in the next 45 minutes produced the most phenomenal crab cakes I've ever had in my life, with crab, with lobster, with fish, with anything. And here it was made with Hericium coralloides. And hats off to Graham, because I couldn't have put something like that together. But as an eating mushroom, this is really top shelf stuff.
Yeah, it has a real, we have found them wild before in Pennsylvania, I think was the state. And they have a sweetness and a richness that really is reminiscent of a crab. Good stuff.
Well, they're very common in the Midwest on hardwoods, oak, and here in Colorado, the two trees you find them on are aspens and narrow-leaf cottonwood. So these are in your backyard in Glenwood Springs along the river bottom, but we never find them because they're late fruiters. There's also another colony of this particular species in the campground at Telluride on a big giant fallen cottonwood, narrow leaf cottonwood. And I'm thankful for Will, because I cultured this one that he found last August, and I'm currently growing it. It's really a healthy strain of this particular species for some reason.
So what about for the ones in the aspens? Do you think we should look, is that the best, maybe most likely place to find them is going to be in aspens in August and September?
And maybe even October. And then there's going to be years at lower altitudes, they're going to be later. This particular one, that's 9,000 feet. So that was what is that? That's like August 20th or something there last year.
Okay. So
22nd or
if we like these, this is a native mushroom, correct? If we want to, Johnny Appleseed's the wrong word, I know. What if we want to get this mushroom out in our local woods? Talk a little bit about that.
okay, so there's a lot of people who are interested in plugging trees and logs and dead wood in their forest. And I've thought a lot about it, and I thought you can buy plug spawn from many different places. But the best way to do it, and probably the best for the forest, is to keep your local fungi there. So instead of going to get an oyster mushroom from some distant source, you can find Colorado oyster mushrooms on aspens or on cottonwoods or on elm, cultivate them, and use those as your plug source. So that was the theory with this Hericium. This is a Colorado native, and I want to go back and try to plug very decomposed aspen logs to aspen logs that have just lost their bark and that are on the ground so they absorb moisture. And I want to plug them with something I really like to eat, but I also want it to be something that's naturally from Colorado. It's not a pink oyster, it's not a yellow oyster. And I noticed that some of the mycologists, I believe Tom Bull, was asking about the pink or the yellow oyster, and do we find it in the wild? So he's interested in learning about how do these non-native species move around? And I'm interested in thinking we should just work with native species. And that way, if we do make a mistake, we're not doing a great mistake.
You know, I've read that in the UK they have even instituted some laws against growing lion's mane specifically, and also culturing it and doing things because they have a native Hericium that they're trying to protect, a wild Hericium, and they don't want the domestic version to get out into the wild like you have seen, especially in the Midwest or the East, where the oysters, you know, you'll find a yellow oyster, which is what, from China or something.
Exactly. And so we should kind of adhere to that. And I believe, I might be mistaken, you know, as the climate changes, we start to see different species of everything. But I think if it's already a native species, your chances of disrupting an ecosystem are very small because it already exists there. And so, and because it exists there, it's going to grow there better already than trying to bring something here generally.
Yeah, Brian.
There are mistakes with mushrooms, and one of the big ones is with the Ganodermas. Ganoderma in our temperate climate is more saprobic than it is parasitic. But if you take Ganodermas to the tropics, and Florida has a big issue with this, everybody's looking for the reishi, and it may be Ganoderma kirtzii instead of Ganoderma lucidum. That's the actual traditional reishi fungi. If it is, it's killing all the coconut palms in Florida. So while it would be saprobic here in the tropics, it could be parasitic. So we need to think about that. And there are people that have lists of what you should and should not bring for fungi to different places.
Hey, we have a question, Brian, from Ella, who's would like us to repeat what trees you're finding those on. I think it maybe broke up a little bit. You said aspen. And
aspen and narrow leaf cottonwood.
Narrow leaf cottonwood. Okay, great. And we got Orion sharing a comment that he saw a report of golden oysters at the Denver Zoo in 2018. And I saw that same report, Orion. He asked, have you heard of any other instances of this species being found here, specifically the golden oyster?
I've never seen it in Colorado in wild, but I think it's been a year or two now since Tom Bulk from La Crosse, Wisconsin, has been asking people, have they seen it starting to show up? Has it been recorded anywhere? And that just tells me he already knows that it's moving in, and he's just recording where it's traveling. So 2 years ago, Ladioporus was found in Boulder. And I wanted to go see what it is. Is it Ladioporus cincinnatus? Is it Ladioporus sulphurensis? Or is it one I've been searching for, Ladioporus gilbertsonii, that's shown up in Arizona? And I don't know. And it's also, I could be getting tricked. Maybe somebody bought plugs for Ladioporus, plugged an old elm stump, and they took off, and it's not really a native. It's just growing there this year.
Could be. Okay, let's jump now topics. You ready? Got another picture from you from your backyard. Last May. What day was this? Snow came last year, last season?
May 21st.
21st.
That's
so
May 21st, 2019. We'd already hit 90 degrees in May, and it looked like we were not going to have a single morel. All of April and May were dry. And we wrote off the morel season because it's May 21st, it's getting late, and it's too dry and it's too hot for morels. And this came. And then on May 24th, 3 days later, 10 inches of the wet snow that broke all the branches and knocked the power out in Colorado Springs melted down in the desert, and one of our desert river bottoms was full of natural morels.
And a pretty low elevation too. I'm guessing you're at like 5,400 or something.
My house is at 63, and I think those are 5,900 feet. So yeah, it's pretty low. That's low for us.
Yeah, I've always had this, not always, I have this theory that if the morels are meant to pop at a certain time because the conditions are right, and it's really dry out, too dry to do it, and we get past that point, they're like done for the year. As opposed to if it rains after they're supposed to come up, will they come up again later? And my answer is usually like, no, I don't think so. I don't, either they come up when they're supposed to, or they're just going to hang their hats up till next year. But this would kind of indicate the opposite, that there's still some ready to pop even later than they might normally. Because I would think you would normally find them 3 weeks earlier at that elevation.
Exactly. And what happened is the conditions returned. So 10 inches of snow, a night of 27 degrees, and then a slow thaw and melt right into May 24th, 3 days later, being really warm.
So one explanation could be not that they...
Like a reversal of conditions.
Yeah.
And it happens with morels sometimes. The weirdest things. It's like, who finds morels in August and September, and yet a few are always found every year at that time? Why? Maybe the conditions at that time of the year are similar enough to the spring conditions that they just can do it. They can just fruit out.
I think maybe then, so maybe my theory is totally right, except in this case, you got the snow, and if the soil temperature was already up past what they want, it brought it back down 10 degrees and maybe reset them so they could go. So not just the precipitation, but really to reverse spring back 3 or 4 weeks is what that cold snow did in that cold weather.
I would say there might be some science to support how they can sit there in stasis, because the fruiting body comes from a sclerotia, which is a bunch of mycelium in a pocket or in a little ball of mycelium. And that might be an adaptation to survive dry climates or to survive cold. And then when the conditions are right, that sclerotia, with the moisture and temperature being correct, can send up the fruiting body when it wants to. And if it's not there, it might be able to hold again till the next year.
That'll be interesting to see what we've had almost a full month of hot, dry, sunny weather. Probably our local soil temps have really gone past what we needed to be. That was 2 weeks ago when they should have popped here. Maybe they're up close to 8,000 feet by now, temperature wise, but I'll bet you our local, it's been cold and rainy all day. Maybe this is going to bring everything back down and we'll get a season, a Morel season down here in Glenwood at 6,000 to 7,000 feet. I feel like,
absolutely.
Yeah, maybe it'll happen. I feel like I want to start looking at 8,000 feet here in a week.
Right. But tomorrow, if I was knocking on your door, I come knocking on your door tomorrow, we're going in the river bottom and we're going to go look. And it can respond that quickly because that ball of sclerotia just needs to be expanded and have enough moisture to know that it can fruit out and get to its final stage there. And everything it's trying to do is to get those spores to the surface where it can procreate and reproduce.
Yeah, we've definitely seen big mushrooms pop within 24 to 36 hours of a rain. Big morels, like they'll go like that big and within a day or two of a rain if the conditions are right. We had a big. Go ahead.
The 4 on this picture from the 24th is 3 days after 27 degrees and 10 inches of snow. And if you were down there on the 20th, you would say, oh, it's already 90 degrees down here. It's dry and crispy and it's never going to rain. Let's go and come back next year.
They're pretty.
Colorado Morels are real and real secretive.
They are.
And
we had a we had a weird rainy situation last year that I felt like I learned a lot from. They were out, the temperatures were perfect. It had dried just a little bit, so they were kind of settling down, and we got a massive rain. I mean, it just huge, and it was cold, and nothing, and everything went down, and it was probably 4 or 5 days before they came up again. And I felt like it was because the soil temp dropped like 10 degrees in 24 hours, and it took several days to get, I think, back to where they needed to be, whereas right now we're too high. Hopefully we'll come down to perfect versus being perfect, coming down and then needing to come up to perfect. So maybe that's what's going to happen. We're going to come down to drop 5 degrees in soil temp, and it's wet, and the sun hasn't come out today. It's cold. It bodes well.
Yes. No, there's still Morel season left in Colorado, and it is funny. We really are fortunate. When it's Morel season in Wisconsin, you've got about 2 weeks, and then when it's gone, because everything in Wisconsin's flat. In Colorado, you could start on the Nebraska-Colorado border in April or March and slowly work your way up the mountain. And August last year, somebody went to a burn near Telluride and came back, and before, and I have a photo, I should have popped this up, before Trad Cotter's lecture last year, in the parking lot, he got out his little frying pan, a stick of butter, some salt and pepper, and was cooking and eating bird morels in the second week of August in Telluride.
Yeah, Chris May took a whole group up there and brought back a busload of people carrying baskets of bird morels, which was awesome.
In August, how crazy! Yeah, Colorado's a rule changer, and of course that's why we love it here too, because it just it supports our addiction. This need to go and see these wild things and possibly collect something we can eat along the way.
I prefer obsession, but last year
I can tell you with the people in the group, it's definitely obsession.
Oh yeah,
especially when it comes to chanterelles or boletes also. And people come up and they're always, what can I do to find a secret spot? And I'll just join the club. There's our secrets are well known, and it's important just to go out and foray with people who are in the know. Mom
Yeah.
was so scientific; she demanded that you learn some of the science of mycology, and I've learned to bend a little bit because all people want to learn is about edibility. And then as soon as they start to learn, they realize they like the science too. So instead of forcing everyone to just be citizen scientists, I've learned that the eating of mushrooms is really why so many people join mycological societies today.
Here, I'm going to show you. My birthday is August 13th. And I say that because last year, on the day before my birthday, we went up into a burn, and there I am on my e-bike, and you can see in the back a bag full of mushrooms.
Wow, how great! Look at that. Oh
So
wow.
that was August 12th, and I'm pretty sure they kept picking up there. It was beautiful. So cool. Morels, that was topic number 2. Oh, wait a minute. Before we go to topic number 3, which is going to be a Colorado Agaricus, Marlene Brown asks, what temperature would be the perfect temperature for morels? That's a common big question. I'm curious what your answer is.
Well, I'm not sure I know a specific answer to that, because I know when it's too hot and dry. And last year that was May 20th. And then on May 21st, there was too much snow and it was too cold and wet. But on May 24th, somehow the temperature was just right. And we get tricked thinking the rule to ground temperature when it might be more important. What is the ground humidity? Also, what is the water content or the moisture content of the soil where these sclerotia are hiding out 8 inches down below the surface? I don't know how many different little not wives' tales, but old things that go with it. Mom used to say, when the aspen's leaves are the size of mouse ears. Well, she's talking about 8,500 feet too. So that might be the first week of June.
Yeah, I think
our desert spot outside of Canyon City might be the first week of April. And our other desert spot might be the first week of May. And then our first mountain spot is next week.
Yeah, I think
so within 40 miles of my house, I have 5 different morel spots that we go to. And on any given year, any one of them can be flush, and yet they're all different. So I don't know that there's a hard, set, and fast rule to temperature and morels, especially with how it flips here. Like there's the people will hike up Pikes Peak, and by 9 o'clock they're peeling their shirt off, and by 10 o'clock they're taking their t-shirt off, and then they get up to bar camp and they are getting a cold rain, and they're all of a sudden they're hypothermic. So you just don't know with Colorado. What's it going to do, and what does that mean for everything that's also in the environment?
Yeah, yeah, and I'd like to say, I mean, we stick thermometers in the soil, and it's kind of fun to do. I've seen a pretty wide range of when I'm finding morels. They'll be anywhere from the high 40s to the mid 50s. And maybe even on the outskirts of that, but that's a pretty big temperature range anywhere you go, like 46 to 55. And a mushroom, there could be one here and one over there, and over here it's 53 and over there it's 48. I feel like while it's fun to talk about the temperature, we're a little fast and loose talking about it. Like, it's not the end all be all of when morels pop. So it's fun to talk about, but I always feel like I like steering beginners the wrong way. Like all you got to do is stick a thermometer in the soil and you're going to know. I don't think it works that way. I think you know by, I look at how tall the grass is. I look at what flowers are blooming. You know, I test it. I look at a lot of things, and there's not one
Right.
that's clear cut. And I think we do people disservice. Oh, little
Yeah.
lunch. What are you having for
I got
dinner?
a cookie delivery. My brother, who is taking over housekeeping and house maintenance here during my mushroom summer, so I can run off and have no schedule but the woods.
Excellent. Well, that means I'll be seeing you in Glenwood soon.
He gets
Okay.
bonus points for bringing me chocolate chip cookies too. So
Wow, that looks good. Let's talk
other
about
things with,
Agaricus. Oh, go ahead.
I gotta say, if there's something else with fungi, and it comes with experience. And you know, a lot of people thought Mom was a witch, and surely she was, but she would say, if you see this fungi, then look for that one and this other one. So she would go out with a group of people, and especially even when she was real old and she wasn't covering a lot of ground, you know, in her 80s, then finally people could keep up with her and or march more than she could into the woods in the mushroom hunt. And she would say, "What did you find there?" And she'd say, "Oh, okay, you found that. Now look for this." And inevitably, it would be the next fungi that shows up, the next mushroom. So with morels, if I see lots of inky caps, Coprinopsis nivea, the little snow inky cap on cow pies or anything, I think, okay, maybe I'm a few days early or a week early for morels. If I see Coprinus comatus, I'm starting to think, oh, okay, I'm about 1 week away from morels. If I see little tiny asparagus just starting to break the dirt, I'm thinking, oh, it's morel time. There's got to be morels pretty soon here. So let's start looking. And it happens so much. You start to see hygrophorous species, the waxy caps all over. And then you think, oh, there's got to be bleats out right now. And you start going around the corner, there's the bleats. You say, oh, we're finding bleats. Is there chanterelles? Yep, there's the chanterelles.
So sometimes the best indicator is another mushroom is really what you're saying. They often kind of really sync up together. I'll show you, like we see the Verpa bohemicas, or is that what they are, before we see the morels come up the week or two ahead.
I got it the other day. A couple club members and I went down into the wet mountains to see if the gate was open. This is a spot a couple hours south of Colorado Springs. It's one of our fabulous mountain areas. It's real easy to get lost in, so everybody has to stay pretty close. But we went down there to plug some of this Hericium, and it's where the Hericium came from. We went down there to plug logs, and there were no mushrooms anywhere, so it's way early. But there was one little tiny brown mushroom. There's still snow on the side of the hills too, coming down. And one of the very first mushrooms in the mountains are the snowbank fungi that are up at 9,000 feet and up usually. And this is Mycena overholtzii, and it has a lot of mycelium on the base of the stipe. It's a really neat Mycena, and it's a snowbank fungi. But what it teased me is that really great snowbank fungi are 2 weeks away, because it leads the race in the snowbank fungi, this one species. And it's usually about 2 weeks ahead of all the rest of the snowbank fungi. So snowbank fungi that are June the 1st to June 21st are probably going to be the last couple weeks of May this year.
Yep, good. All right. Hey, let's go to topic number 3. Not that we haven't talked about a lot of topics. Let me share my screen. And I was hoping you could share with us some Agaricus wisdom. Agaricus is a difficult mushroom to ID for a lot of people. I find it to be a more advanced mushroom to learn. However, they're kind of neat because there's some at low elevation and some up in the mountains. So I'm not sure how to broach the topic here, like to talk about Agaricus. Should we talk about some lower elevation ones or higher elevation, or kind of how to tell if they're edible? What do you think is a good way to talk about Agaricus?
Agaricus is a genus that has enough easy to learn edible species that it becomes really valuable to the forager. At low altitudes, you can find 3 species that are edible. Agaricus bitorquis, Agaricus bernardii group, which we call group because there might be several different ones in there, and Agaricus campestris. And they are all fantastic eating mushrooms. And then we go up to the mountains, and there's another 3 or 4 species of Agaricus, or maybe even more. And I'll expand on that in a minute. Where we are down on the flats and in the cities, most of us, there's lots of Agaricus. They're in the medians of the road and all over. And there's one group that's a sickener, Agaricus xanthoderma. Xanthoderma, when you cut it, stains yellow and does not smell good. It has that chemical phenol, sorbine junior, library paste smell, which some people are sensitive and they're not. It kind of looks like the cap or pileus looks like a marshmallow or almost cube shaped more than round. And if you can avoid that one in that group, but it's easy to learn to separate it out, you can hardly get in trouble with Agaricus. And some of the best eating ones are really up in the woods and right up by tree line.
So at low, you're talking about low elevation though, right? You were just now.
I'm both. Yeah, both places. So down low, you will find great eating Agaricus, and down low is 8,500 feet down to whatever we have for our lowest elevations in Colorado, maybe 3,400 feet. You find bitorquis, and bitorquis even grows in Pueblo, and it is a really strong hydraulic jack of a mushroom, and it can be in the most packed, hard pan, dry dirt, and it'll push up and push those big dry. I've seen it in driveways of the most compacted soil, and it'll just blast them up and out of there. And it has, at some point, it looks like it has 2 rings, 2 annulas, where the annulus splits, can split and look like 2, which is why they call it a bitorquis.
Ah.
Well, we find that in our desert areas and in the hardpack dirt. We find bernardii, which is kind of a red staining, more tan on the cap. And we find campestris, which has an enrolled margin. So the edge of the cap is enrolled on the gills. And they do not stain yellow. And they're very good. Now, when we go up in the mountains, everybody says the almond smelling Agaricus. And this photo's one. This is not that high, I think about 8,300 feet. And I'm not sure the species of this one because it's just a little different than the ones they call the Prince or Augustus or Julius. So Rick Kerrigan, who is the Agaricus expert, finally, after many decades of hearing about this, came out with the new Agaricus of North America Super Tome. I don't know if you can see this or not,
Yes.
but here it is. Look at this big baby. And what a beautiful book this is. And this really puts it all together on how they all fit across North America. And he came out to visit and he said, your Agaricus Augustus is not Agaricus Augustus. And I said, well, then what is it? And he said, I'd like to find more, but I'm calling it Agaricus Julius, which was another Caesar from the Roman days, but different than, and separates it out. So I think in 2017, all of a sudden we found a ton of those, and I'd never thought about those Julius. And they were at 11,000 feet. They were just above the last group of spruce, but most certainly some association to that particular group of high altitude spruce, Engelmann spruce. And they were one of the best eating mushrooms I've ever put in my mouth. They needed nothing but olive oil, salt, and pepper. And they were like eating prime rib. They were meaty. They had a like steak-like flavor to them. Oh, they were phenomenal. They were really good.
Well, even though I think the ones we've found are either Augustus or Silicola up higher in elevation when we're like looking for boletes and chanterelles.
Yeah, Silvicolas,
Silvicola,
maybe a little less almond smell, but maybe a bit of an almond scent to them. They're common here on the Front Range. They're a good eating mushroom.
Is that a high elevation mushroom too, right? The Silvicola stains yellow,
pretty high, yeah.
like almonds.
Yeah, Silvicola.
I mean, that's been my thing when we go up and find them at high elevation. It's newer for me. I'm looking for them to stain yellow, smell like almonds. I bring them home and I taste them a little bit. I cook them really well. And then after a little bit of tasting, I'll eat a bunch. And boy, they're delicious.
They are. And so when I say I don't know what this species of Agaricus is, but I still ate it. And of course, you want to be 100% sure about your identification, right? And as you teach people, you can't eat something unless you're, well, that was one where I was 100% sure it was going to be an edible fungi, but I really don't know what the species, and I'm not sure anything less than DNA is going to know what the species is for those. So this next year, I'm really going to keep my eyes open for unique location Agaricus. And then I want to get those to somebody like David Aurora or someone who is interested in working on Agaricus, or Rick Kerrigan or whoever, and see if really maybe we have a couple of different ones. And one of the things Rick Kerrigan impressed upon me was that if you want to find new species of Agaricus, one of the very best places to look is probably Colorado and New Mexico, because these mountains are underchecked for mushrooms. And we'll pull it up and put it in the frying pan and say, yep, that was a fantastic eating Agaricus. And yet, was it different than Julius?
Maybe it's an Augustus Barzee.
Blizzardii.
No, you're the one I'm just eating them. You're discovering them.
Be careful what you ask for. You could get mushrooms named after you.
So tell me this. Well, I got two questions. Why the eye? Why do they put an eye after things to name a mushroom species? What's the eye?
Well, the word ended in I, like the name, someone's name, it ended in I, and then they add another. It's
like
it's a species thing. I couldn't. That's something I was forced to take Latin when I was in school, but grammatic Latin, I'm not exact on why all the grammar is why it is.
Did you read a lot of Hercules in high school?
And no, that was Greek stuff. I got through the Greek stuff okay and survived some of that, but the Latin was really quite torturous, and it didn't seem like there was a purpose, but now, of course, you realize, oh, that's quite a few of our root birds are
Yeah.
flat and good. That's good to know.
Okay, so here was my real question, which might still be twofold. Number one is, can you give us a couple of guidelines if we're at low elevation, what we want to look for before we might try IDing or eating a one of these Agaricus. And number two is, if we're not sure, we can put it up on, say, Facebook. And I see a lot of people putting Agaricus stuff on Facebook and asking about it and feel like they don't document it correctly to get the right answer. So number one is, give us some guidelines, what we're looking for to see whether it's even in the game. And number two, if we want to get an identification, what are the things we need to make sure we do with this mushroom?
Okay, I think Agaricus is a great genus to start with. You can, when you find good eating specimens, they're delicious. When you find buggy specimens, you learn all about bugs. They're big, they're meaty, they have paint-free gills, they have an annulus or a ring, and so they have features that help you to identify them. And if you're interested in learning and eating Agaricus, the best thing you can do is learn the toxic group, which is the Xanthoderma, Agaricus xanthodermus group. And if you can learn the Xanthodermus group, then you can stay away from the one group in Agaricus that's a known sickener. As far as I know, there's no fatal Agaricus, but there's some that'll definitely give you a gastrointestinal upset. And that's a small group, but they're common and they can be near each other. So you could find an Agaricus campestris 6 feet away, find a yellow staining sickener Agaricus. And the rule with Agaricus is you always cut them from top to bottom. And in 10 minutes, the oxygen's going to get in there and they're going to make some stain or not. And they'll also have great smell, or they will not have a great smell. If they smell chemical, phenol, library paste, soybean junior type smell to them, then those are really easy to discard because that's not usually something people associate with a flavor they would like to eat anyway. So I think Agaricus are a pretty good group to work with, to start with.
People are always going to ask
me, the easiest way to learn them is just learn that one sickener group. If you Googled the sickener Agaricus, it would come up and you can learn everything about that one. Then the rest of them are pretty much free game.
Especially though, we should be looking out for the Bitarchus and the campestris at lower elevations. That Bitarchus is in that hard packed soil with a double ring, perhaps, if you can see it, right? It disappears maybe. You can't always see it.
Yep.
Okay.
And Bernardii. And the three
Bernardii
closer to red than they ever do yellow.
Oh, the Bernardii stain red and smell like briny, right?
Yes. And one of those ones from Denver City Park that might be, it's actually kind of has its own salt. It's kind of a salty flavor to it even. So that might be what you call briny, a briny smell or a briny flavor.
Yeah, let me just pop this up here. I got a few pictures in my files. I took these. This is these are just my personal files. They're not online. This is a Michael Quo picture, and you can see the red stain in there.
Exactly, great.
Like that, and it's also that has that. I think this is another one of his pictures. I got it from MycoWeb. It has those kind of a little scaly on top too, with this Bernardii is what we're looking at here.
I think Michael Webb is Michael Wood.
Michael Webb. Oh, he's okay. I think you're right.
Yeah,
you're right. The other one's mushroom expert.
Guy he is. He's just a great mycologist. A lot of fun to learn from, and really smart. California guy. Okay.
Yeah,
so
I like that site.
When I talk that, I don't know all the species of Agaricus. Do you have that one from the burn?
Yeah, let's look at that right here. I have that right here for you. Very unusual. I've
Okay, so
never
what
seen
the
a
heck?
Agaricus in a burn
What the
before.
heck is this? Here's where an expert is silenced. This is a burn Agaricus. This is in June last year. This is the Spring Creek fire in outside of Levita, Colorado. And somehow this Agaricus popped up. It's about 10,000 feet at this spot. It's middle of June, second weekend of June. And I have no idea what this species is. And I'll bet you anything it's something real unusual.
Is it a yellow stainer? It looks like it, or is that spores dropping down on the top of it in here, like in this area?
I think it had yellow color to it. And some of the almonds, the almond agaricus, will stain lightly yellow, but they don't have that chemical smell. And I'm not really sure what this was, and I hope it got up to the herbarium I meant for it to go up there. And I did collect it and dry it as a specimen. And, you know, that's a really important thing. As a citizen scientist, we have to connect with the professionals in our science. And I know we do that because we travel around and go to listen to these people speak and talk. But Colorado has great resource right in Denver at the Denver Botanic Garden. Inside the Botanic Gardens, and it's worth the membership just to go in or a day fee, is the Sam Mitchell Herbarium of fungi. This is the collection of fungi all over the world, collected from all over, but many specifically just from Colorado. And there's professional mycologists working in there, and they are the ultimate resource for identification and how to make a collection and how to be a citizen scientist. And I urge everybody who's passionate about learning about fungi is to make a connection with the Sam Mitchell Herbarium, because that can take somebody like me who's basically a babbling idiot when it comes to specific fungi. And I can go up there and get the inside story and come back and sound like a genius. And no, it's the people up there that the volunteers and the staff are really fantastic.
Yeah, they're a nice group.
And it's also connected. One of the great resources is connected. What's the one I'm trying to think of that has all the different herbariums on it? Mycoportal.
Mm-hmm.
Mycoportal has all the different collections. So you can go on to Mycoportal website and figure it out and register up on there. And then you could say, I'm interested in Agaricus. And then you could look up Agaricus, and then you'll find all the different species. And you could say, I'm interested in this species by Torcus. And you could go through the years of collection, find the date where they found them, the county where they found them, and give yourself a recipe for success to go back and look for something. And it's already there. There's 40 years of collections in there. But I get stuck all the time. And if it wasn't for the Sam Mitchell Herbarium, I'd be a lost soul down here in Colorado Springs. So I count on those people. Vera Evenson, our mushroom marm, our mushroom mother, our mama mushroom is in our Good Colorado book. She's now curator emeritus, I believe. And but she comes in a couple times a week, and what a great legacy she's built there and is leaving for everybody. And the next generation's all set up. What great people are all involved there. And to have a scientific resource you can go to with any fungi you find anywhere in the state of Colorado and get positive ID and submit it for DNA and learn about the science of mycology. What a great, we're so lucky. There's states that don't have herbariums, and we do have a great one up there.
Well, we're lucky to have Vera. She definitely has brought us along with all of her writings and teachings.
Well, you know, people think I'm an expert, but I can tell you, growing up where Vera was my mom's good friend. She was like Auntie Vera. So she's always taken me under wing and explained things to me and not laughed at me when I needed laughed at the most. And she's just really been a fantastic mentor. And I can't say enough about what a great lesson she's been able to teach me in my life and continues to teach me about the wild mushrooms in Colorado. Wow, she is just fantastic, you know.
I got a couple questions here that have come in. I'd like to ask you if we can kind of back it up a minute. Some of these we kind of covered a little bit. So, number one, somebody asked about, do you work with agar for cultivation? And if so, what's your favorite medium for lion's mane? I think they're asking you that question, Brian.
Oh, great. Okay, so for cultivation, agar is superior to everything. And agar is a very broad term because agar is like saying, how do you like your eggs?
It's like saying soda.
There's a million different recipes, right? And I know Berkeley has over 200 patented agar recipes, all for specific fungi. So it'll work fine on a saprobic one. With lion's mane, it's really easy to take from a clean specimen by cutting down into the center of it and putting it in liquid culture. I'll turn around and grab a jar of liquid culture. Here's the lion's mane from that specimen. And here it is growing on liquid culture. Look, it's trying to rise up above the liquid and conquer the world. And I can go into this with a syringe that I've flame sterilized and suck some of this tissue out and squirt it into what I like to use is Siberian or Chinese elm, which is our Colorado trash tree. There's forever piles of it. People are forever chipping it. And I like to use 2/3 elm and 1/3 wheat berry or oat or rye grain. Then I'll go straight to it with a syringe, and then in about 20 days, it starts to really colonize up nice. And in about 25 days, where this jar is, you can no longer shake it, but you can see it's going to start making pom-poms here pretty soon.
It looks like it's starting just a little bit right there on top, fruiting, yeah.
Yeah, this will fruit right out of the jar, and I gave Jennifer some and said, put this, just unscrew the cap and spray some water in there and let it sit in your fruiting chamber, and it'll fruit out of the jar like this. You don't even have to mess with it. But these jars I made to take out to the woods and replug, so good. That's what I'm using.
Okay, well, that sounds like a good answer. I by the way, I use the same. I've used all kinds of agar recipes. Mushrooms don't seem to care whether it's honey or malt extract or potato based. Man, they eat it up. And then I do like you, a grain and wood mixture. And I have a refrigerator full of all those nasty jars too. That my wife, she's awesome. She doesn't care. She encourages me. So nice to have those. I mean, I must have 25 of those jars in my fridge too, all different sizes and shapes and colors. I would say that, I don't know who asked the question. It was an anonymous attendee, Brian. I'm curious what you think, but I feel like Hericium, man, it's like oyster. It's like, it just doesn't care. It's gonna go eat. It's like the honey badger. You give it whatever you can, and it's gonna eat it. As long as maybe it's not like a conifer.
Yes, I agree. It likes deciduous trees. I think it grows on a wide variety from oaks to walnuts to things in nature. And the fact that this one can go from a narrow leaf cottonwood to an elm or to a aspen tree. Well, okay, the cottonwood and the aspen are both poplar family trees, but the elm is not. And yet, you know, it's eating a junk wood tree and making fantastic fungi.
Yeah. Although I use oak whenever. I mean,
Yeah,
oak's my
it's
favorite. I
so
feel
easy
like
to
everything
grow.
goes on
Why
oak.
wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Why
next
wouldn't you grow?
question. You ready for the next one? From a
Yep.
same anonymous attendee. I don't know who it is. They're anonymous. They ask a question. Do we have destroying angels to watch out for? Question mark. And that was in the
Oh,
context of
good, good.
Agaricus.
Oh, what a great question. Okay, so within the whole thing about eating fungi, absolutely we don't want to ever see anybody eat one that could kill them. Now, in Colorado, there's probably 4 or 5 mushrooms that could kill you. And we have a destroying angel. If you use the terms destroying angel loosely, you don't put a species on it. You're talking about fungi that are in the Amanita genus. They're called destroying angel because they're usually white in appearance. And the one we have, the one that's common is Amanita phalloides, and that's a destroying angel. There's a couple other Amanitas that are also quite deadly with amatoxin. And there's one in Colorado, Amanita bisporigia, and now has been taken to subspecies to Amanita bisporigia pahasapaensis. And pahasapaensis is the sacred lands of South Dakota. And Pahasapa means the sacred lands in the Sioux language in Lakota, I believe. And that's the name that stuck because that was where one of the collections was. Now, they showed up about 20 years ago in Colorado, and we hadn't had them before. And they showed up in southern Colorado, south of I-70. Now they're moving north. And they were found outside of Denver last year. This is the one mushroom I really worry about. It's very, very common under scrub oak.
What's the species? That's the
Amanita bisporigia.
bisporigia. I don't know. Kristen, can you look that up maybe and type that in there for everybody? Bisporigia. Okay, so go ahead. We're finding it under scrub oaks?
Yep, it's under scrub oaks or Quercus gambellii, like Gamble's oak. And they're common where you are and common where we are here. They're not a very high altitude thing. They probably stop at about 8,500 feet or so. And they're a short, bushy oak tree with an oak-shaped leaf. You don't usually go for edible fungi underneath those because there's not a lot. The boletes that show up under the scrub oak are most certainly toxic. Red staining and most certainly toxic.
How do we tell an amanita, a poisonous amanita, real quick? Is there a way, something we should look out for? I mean,
they're so white and perfect, and beautiful. I mean, you can see how people would hold one up, and here's this perfect, beautiful angel, and then you hold up a Morel, and it's ugly and brown, and it's got pits, and it doesn't look classic. Oh my goodness, I don't know how people figured out that they ate that and died, but that's one I worry about. We haven't had a call yet. I have calls about people eating Amanita muscaria having a bad trip. Yeah. I've had calls about eating Antherinus and having a bad trip. I get calls about a lot of mushrooms, but fortunately, I haven't had a call about this one yet, and I hope I don't. Because
it's not native though, right? It came in, didn't it? Or is it native?
Well, if it's native, it was never found before about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It might have been in southern Colorado all along, but I don't think so. I think it's slowly moving in.
Yeah.
And I think it's a climate change invader, and it's showing up. But it seems to be climbing the hill. And I think last year they found one at 8,500 feet under a ponderosa. And they may have found these under pinon pines also, and scrub oak. And so I'm very cautious of of this one, and maybe I should talk a little more about it in the future to the clubs, or show more slides of it.
Yeah,
Be careful of
I'd
it.
love to see some pictures of specimens if you find any this summer. Um,
Yeah.
But I still got a
Yeah.
few more questions. We're gonna keep moving here, only because we're getting some good
Yeah.
questions. We got Bryce has a good one about Agaricus, Brian, for you. Here you go. He said, last year I learned to squeeze the cap of Bernard EI, and it's slightly soft, even in a healthy specimen. Neat trick. Could this be confirmed?
That it's a softer mushroom and not quite as firm, or
I think that's what he means. It's slightly soft capped.
I don't know as I have any experience in that, so that I'm not sure that it could be something, because textures and things are something. Sometimes you can take a little bite of a fungi and you can tell something by the texture or the flavor, and then spit it out and not ingest any poison, and may discover something about it. But I haven't heard that before with Bernardii. So
good. Well, Bryce, good job, Bryce. You stumped him. I'm just saying that's what that is. You just stumped Brian.
it could
So
be
we should have a
something.
prize.
Yeah, maybe explore that a little further. And as soon as you know you have a collection of different agaricus, maybe give them all a squeeze and make a note of it. Maybe you're stumbled on something there, Bryce.
Okay. Anonymous asked about fruiting in the jar or move to bags, right? You could do either, I assume. You could go bigger into bags or smaller in jars. The lion's mane?
Agaricus?
No, they were talking about the Hericium.
Oh, yeah.
I don't fruit in jars. I think they're frustrating. They're just too small.
Yeah, they need the fresh air exchange. So,
yeah.
And then they'll really get big. But it's a combination, and it's a delicate fungi. You notice it turns brown right away. That's bacteria and other stuff jumping on it right away. It's probably why it's not more common than it is, because it has storage problems, and it gets other invaders. But bags, I've seen some really nice fruitings out of bags where with just the X razor blade X cut through there, and I grew it in a pretzel jug, one of those big 3-gallon plastic pretzel jugs. That worked okay. But I'm really excited about maybe seeing it in the woods again, just fruiting right out of logs. And I'm putting my heart and soul into that this year, even if I fail.
Yeah, I will say me too. I have a expectation that I'm going to get some cultures in the mail from you in the next couple days. And I'm going to be out in the woods plugging my aspens too, on that same mushroom for sure. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to plug the aspens that are on my drive to my favorite hunting spots so I can watch them all fall. Brian, here's your next one.
Go back and look at that. Look at how gray that aspen is.
It's like really far gone.
Yeah, the bark's gone. And I notice now when I go out there to drill these logs, I'll drill 4 or 5 inches down in an 8-inch diameter log. And if the wood chips come up dry from down in the plug hole, I don't even bother. But if it's damp down in there, then I put them right in. I want to put the inoculant in there because I know it doesn't need anything else.
I got a good question from Dave here. It's on my mind too. What is your gut feeling on Telluride this year? Telluride as usual or a modified festival?
This is the $100,000 question we're all waiting for. I'll be heartbroken if it's canceled, but they're such a smart group of people that they'll, at worst case scenario, have a fantastic virtual seminar. For us in Colorado, it's a real highlight of our year to enjoy the Telluride thing. It's our mecca. It's our hodge of mycology to end up out there and see everybody every year. I'm just hoping it's going to do its thing. I think with this whole virus, there's a lot of natural conditions that change when viruses appear. And we got a shot we took a shot over the bow this year when the Colorado fruit died. So this year, all of our fruit flowers froze and fell off, and we're not going to have a big Colorado fruit crop. But imagine all of the pollen that hits the air at about this time of year. These little pollen granules can be 30, 40, 50, 60 microns across. And you're a little 0.1 micron virus, and you're attracted to bigger staticky bodies that have proteins in them. You end up stuck to the pollen, and that's the end of your cycle. You don't get to go on and infect and live your cycle out. So pollen and spores actually play a huge role in controlling viruses. And usually why in the springtime and early summer, viruses, that's it for them until the fall again. It probably has more to do with pollen and spores.
Because they're attaching to other things in the environment versus floating around and getting on our hands or in our nose. Is that your theory?
Absolutely. Just like raindrops condense on spores and other molecules that are up there in the air, they need something to connect to. Yeah. These little corona guys, they jump onto these, whatever the next thing is, and it could be a pollen grain just as easily as anything. You know, here's the pollen grain running around with all this genetic information in it. It looks just like any other cell with DNA, except it's big.
Do you think you'll go to Telluride? Even if Telluride doesn't happen, do you think you would just go because other people will be there and it'll be a fun time to be there, second week of August?
I'm really curious to see how this is going to play out, and we have obligations as a club to see what's coming down the line. Of course, we're hosting Juliana, the Pikes Peak Club is the week after Telluride. So I'm very much in limbo of how this is all going to play out, but very hopeful because it would just be great to have Juliana out, and she has so much to teach us.
Yeah.
And I learned so much at Telluride. Telluride may have or originally had an image of just a wild Psilocbe fest of mycology, when the truth is we have all these fantastic mycologists coming from all over the world to speak about specific things, and really the portion that's just about hallucinogenic fungi is kind of small compared to the grand picture.
Yeah, it definitely has that reputation.
It does. And thanks, Mr. O'Reilly, Bill O'Reilly. Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly.
Yeah, for those of you that haven't gone.
It doesn't hurt us because we know mycology is so big, and we know it's ever expanding, and we're not a group of people that's to be lumped into any one group to begin with, so it doesn't bother us.
All right. Hey, on that note, I don't think we have any other live questions right now. Here's a fresh one for you. Most people say that Colorado doesn't have psychedelic mushrooms. Can you talk about that? What or have any of you found here?
I have, and I'm sorry I don't have a picture to queue up because I found it. We had this incredible moisture cycle in 2015, which was the wettest May on record, and then that August, things that I've never seen in Colorado popped up, and one happened to be a new species of Psilocbe that I found over here on the Front Range that was growing on decomposing wood and grass. And it was a very small thing, and I didn't think much about it when I collected it because I was collecting for the Denver Mushroom Fair. So I grabbed my wax bags, which I have to have, and are impossible to find, but I somehow found them by the case. Very expensive, but found cases of them on Amazon or someplace. And I proceeded to load up 286 specimens collected in 18 hours and then rushed to Denver. The next morning, we open these bags up and go through it, and I'm looking at this small brown mushroom that is now completely blue stained. and I realized I have found some kind of strange blue staining mushroom, and that all the other characteristics match genus Psilocbe. So there
Listen,
are Psilocbes to find in Colorado. There are other fungi that possess psilocin in Colorado that are in different genus. There is many different compounds in many different mushrooms. And if genus Psilocbe teaches us anything, it teaches us, hey, if these compounds are in this group of mushrooms, what's in all the rest? And within that are all these fantastic things. It's great that our mind can go on vacation, but wouldn't it be great when somebody finds a mushroom that's the new antiviral compound or the new antibiotic compound? We're going to need these things, and there they are in mushrooms. And all we have to do is be, was it Alexander Fleming that discovered the penicillin by accident? We have to be the Fleming and discover these great compounds that are in these mushrooms. But there is. It's some debate as to what species it is. Alan Rockefeller, a character from the Bay Area who does a lot of genetics, swears up and down that it is Psilocbe aztecorum. But Psilocbe aztecorum grows in a tropical place in Mexico. And this is a place at 10,000 feet that gets to 30 below and 20 feet of snow in the wintertime. So I'm pretty sure it's not that, but it might be very closely related. And if it's wet this fall, maybe it'll show up again, but it hasn't shown up. I've only found it twice, once in 2015 and once in 2017. And you would think that I would have been smart enough to culture it or spore print it or something, but no, I didn't.
it sounds unlike you.
How did I miss that? Maybe it'll show up this year. I know where it is. I know where it likes to live.
I got to say, if I'm like, oh, I'm looking for a spore print or a culture of some wild mushroom that's local, like you're the first person I would reach out to. And usually like, yeah, I got some of that. So,
well, maybe it'll show up. And really what I'd like to see is I would like to get enough of them so that the DNA can be reprocessed to see where it really does fit. Mm-hmm. And I think if it is a new Psilocbe, I'd like it to be named after Manny Salzman. Mm-hmm. So I proposed when I found it, which is a very broad proposal because I'm in no position to name anything. Or even have the skills to describe this particular species, but we'll get a go at it if we find it again. To name it Psilocbe salzmanii after Manny Salzman, the founder co-founder of the Telluride Mushroom Festival and all the good mushroom energy he's brought to Colorado for sure.
Yeah, he passed maybe 2 years ago. Is that right?
Yeah. He was Colorado's first ethnomycologist, and he is an original member of the Denver Club when they started up, and he was always a promoter of the hallucinogenic fungi. He was a radiologist in Denver, and just a lovely human being. And he never came down off of it. And in the history of this, in my life, in 40 or 50 years of this whole thing, it went from not being illegal to becoming illegal under Nixon to coming full circle now where they have to admit this is really not very dangerous. This might be very helpful for people. And maybe it ought to be reclassified. So we'll see where it goes. In my club, I don't recommend anybody messes with it because it's still illegal. I live in the heart of Republicanness, Colorado, in Florida Springs, and I can tell you the federal authorities haven't really changed their opinion on it. And I wouldn't want anybody to get in trouble, but I know it's way overblown as to where it's classified in, along with the other dangerous drugs that are classified with it.
Yeah, it seems like a political classification more than one driven by, certainly by
It really was.
mycologists. Yeah.
It really was about the Vietnam War more than anything. And
Yeah.
one of the things that Dr. Michael Bugh, who's done more research on these than anybody, and with license to do so from the DEA, mentioned was maybe these fungi cause empathy.
Cause what?
And empathy.
Oh, I thought you said impotence.
No, empathy.
Okay.
No, I think there's just the chemicals in the food that does that. And his statement was, they wanted you to be able to volunteer and go kill people in Southeast Asia. They don't want Americans walking around with empathetic feelings towards anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly doesn't make you want to go to war. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we want you to go kill these dark-skinned people who are communists who live in Southeast Asia, even though you can't point on a map where Vietnam is. And actually, that was true, because at that time, those maps didn't say Vietnam. They all just said French Indochina. Nobody knew where it was.
I'm going to guess booze is a better drug for that than mushrooms. Okay, I got a few more questions. We're almost up on time here. I got two more questions. Number one is Laughing Jims. Somebody asked if we have those in Colorado. I've never heard of them here. I don't even remember the scientific name.
We do. Yeah, we do. And somehow my mom is one of the few people that have ever found one. I'm looking back in her notes, and I found out where she found it. We also have a blue staining Pluteus too. I won't give away where these things are. You have to go find them yourself. But they're wood lovers. I'll tell you, they're wood lovers. I'll tell you also, they're above 8,500 feet.
What kind of forest?
And I'll tell you that if you're looking for Psilocbes, you want to be above 9,000 feet, and you're going to have to look for old rotting alpine fir. Not Doug fir, but the next group of fir trees that are higher. And you want to be careful and look at what you're looking at, because you start looking for little brown mushrooms, I worry about people finding gallerinas.
Yeah, deadly.
And so, yeah, if you're looking for Psilocbes, you need to know the difference between all the little brown mushrooms, and there's some to learn there. And there are other little brown mushrooms that might be blue staining that are also poisonous or toxic. Like there's one that has muscarine, and there's a mycena in there that might be. I would say there's between 14 and 20 species of fungi in Colorado that have something in them.
Yeah, but that's the realm of experts.
Mom found a blue staining Gymnopolis. She brought it to the Denver Fair in the late 80s, and I volunteered to try it. At that time, I was a college kid. And you can do all kinds of things when you're a college kid you can never do later on in life. And so I immediately raised my hand to volunteer and try it. The reports are with Gymnopolis, it's an exceptionally bitter mushroom, and you might not be able to stomach it in your mouth because it's so bitter. But being an idiot college kid, I decided I definitely wanted to try it. I waited until the last hour of the fair, and I found the plate where it was, and somebody snatched it.
It was gone.
To this day, we don't know what's an hallucinogenic. Now, here's an interesting thing about Gymnopolis. On the East Coast, they're very potent, psilocin positive. On the West Coast, and I've seen them right there in Berkeley Harbor, here's this big, beautiful orange mushroom. You touch it, it bruises blue, and it has no psychoactivity at all. How is that? So we don't know if the Colorado Gymnopolis is psychoactive or not, and it's going to take a wet fall, but you're going to find it in the end of July and in the end of August, along with, that's the timing for Psilocbes. Um, look in unique environments. Look in the prairie. Look in the desert areas. Pick times when it's unusually wet. And if it's bleach season, who's going to go look for a little tiny brown mushroom growing off of a log when there's 50 pounds of bleach over your shoulder? This is why a lot of times we don't find these things. How can you stop when the hillside's orange with chanterelles to look at some little brown thing?
Okay. All right. Last question. You have 1 minute to answer it. What are the good russulas to eat? Or do you say russula, maybe?
Oh, what is that one? That Zarumpalina.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, the shrimp one. You know what? And I'm going to learn to eat some more russulas this year. I've always thought of russulas the sickener because we think about Russula emetica. Russulas are super interesting now. I had no idea how interesting they are. They're interesting scientific. They're interesting for the compounds that are inside of them. This Russula emetica may be very effective against cancers, and I have a Chinese book where they tested it on cancers induced in rats, and it was 80 to 100% effective on Ehrlich stomach cancer and sarcoma 180. This Russula emetica that we never eat. We have a shrimp Russula that smells like shrimp, tastes like shrimp. Oh, it's a lovely thing. That's a great one.
Yeah, stains your pan red too.
Yes, and now I know that there's russulas above tree lines. We always thought about russula as ectomycorrhizal, and they have to have trees to have an associate. But apparently now they grow above tree line. There's a young researcher named Chance who is working with Kathy Cripps up in Montana State University. And he has found 8 species of russula above tree lines. So they must be in association with those little willows or something. So that's it, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I was gonna have Kristen bring our jar. We collect the shrimp russula, the Zarumpalina, and they dry up pretty nice. And when you cook them in the pan, they smell like shrimp, and they turn everything red, and they're pretty good.
That's cool. Aren't they cool?
Yeah. Here we go. Oh, there's not many left. We've eaten most of them.
There's a half a dozen edible russula, and it's not difficult to learn the edible ones.
Smells kind of funky.
The ones that are not so edible are very, very spicy tasting. So you can take a little bite of a russula and hold it on the tip of your tongue, taste it, and then spit it out.
The difference visually between the emetica and the Zarumpalina is they look very similar. I mean, you can tell once you learn the Zarumpalina stains a little olive and maybe isn't pure white on the stem, but boy, you put a little taste of the emetica on your tongue, you got to get it out. It's spicy.
It's really spicy, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool. That's very cool.
I think it's fun too. Russulas or whatever we're going to call them are fun because even when other things aren't out, you can often pick up a nice basket of them. And you know, when the chanterelles or the boletes are not out there for you, they're like a hawkswing. They seem to always be around.
That's one of the great things about our passion here is we know what the prizes are, but we find all these little treats along the way. And I was trying to think where is my list? It's over 120 species long for mushrooms I've consumed from Colorado without ever getting sick once.
Wow. Oh, mine's only like 35. So I got some catching up to do.
They're out there, and I think I want to try a lot of things I never tried, like different russulas and different coral fungi. A lot of the coral fungi are being eaten now, and I want to try some of those and see. Oh, that's another one that you could put in. I found a hallucinogenic coral fungi, a blue staining coral fungi at high altitude.
That'll have to be for another webinar. We really need to wrap up here. We're a few minutes over. But Orion did
No,
ask. I see a few more questions came in. He said a couple years ago you and he chatted about Swillis, and you shared a paper you contributed to. Have there been any new interesting Swillis discoveries in the last couple of years since you talked?
the Swillis are fantastic. I knew nothing about them. I thought they were generally slimy and uninteresting. And then I met this great guy who came from Berkeley, got his PhD at Berkeley, Dr. New Win, this young mycology guy who his specific connection is his PhD is in ecology. And it's the ecology of how fungi and the rest of the forest connect. And he taught me everything I know about Swillis today, which is they're all critical ectomycorrhizal associates of the pine trees, and every species of pine tree has its own species of Swillis. I didn't know that. And so we made some great finds. We found a new species. I'm not worthy of being included on such a great, with such great scientists. I'm just citizen scientist guy here, but one thing I think that I have a pretty good grip on is when serious scientists come to Colorado and they say, can you help me find this particular genus of fungi? I've got a pretty good clue as where to go. And it was really neat. And I have photos of Dr. New finding the Swillis under bristlecone pine and putting that in the collection. And that is Swillis borealis, meaning northmost, right? Borealis, like Aurora Borealis, or the northern lights. It means the northern Swillis. And so these fungi, these Swillis in the five-needle pines, whether it's a limber pine or the five-needle northern white pine or the bristlecone, they're endangered. And the secret to their success in propagation has to do with the Swillis fungi, which is very cool.
Okay. Now we're over time. There's no more questions from anyone are going to get answered except Michael asked a good one. I think let's end on this one. Michael O'Fallon says his nephew lives at 9,200 feet. He is a paramed and mushroom lover. Are there any mushrooms we can plant there?
Well, what's wrong with doing the Hericium?
Yeah, so number one would be the Hericium. Michael, if you reach out to me, and I assume it's good with you, Brian, I'll share your culture with him. Maybe even make up some plugs for him if he wants them. But certainly you could also do, I would assume, like a wine cap, and some wood chips is an easy one to grow, even at that elevation.
Flammulina up there, the Flammulina velutifedes populicola that grows on it. That's a great one for up there.
Okay. AKA enoki. Is that what that is?
Enoki toxic.
So those all do well at high elevation.
Yep, and the oyster on Aspen is great too.
We see that pine oyster too, that phoenix oyster up at high elevation sometimes in pine trees.
I have seen it in Boulder County on a Doug fir that was way up there. Yeah.
So, all right. So there are some, Michael. If you want some starts for those, reach out to me after this. modernforager.com. Brian, man, thanks. It's always fun rapping with you on whatever's going on in mushrooms, and it was fun to kind of free flow through this. So thank you.
Well, I hope you and Kristen come out and we get to share some time again before Telluride. I think we could. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for the great questions. I hope I didn't leave anybody more befuddled than they were when they started.
Thanks, man. And bye, everybody.
Let's look forward to a great year.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye now.